So we have been in this sermon series called How Not to Wreck Your Life, and we have been studying the book of Proverbs, and I think has been a very humbling sermon series to preach as a pastor. I think one of the things that sometimes most people think is that the pastor is not affected by what he preached. And this sermon has really affected your pastor personally. And I think my walk with Christ has improved as I have studied the book of Proverbs, as I have heard from God and crafted sermons for you. But it's not only me who has been impacted too. In the last couple of weeks, we have Dusty Hostetler, a guy who is really wise on finances, talk to us about generosity, the importance of giving, and how the biblical perspective on giving says that generosity, to give is better to receive, and he shares with us on that. It is good for a pastor sometimes to recognize his weaknesses, and finances is one of them for me, and then to learn from someone else. So that was a great for me personally, a lot of thought that comes to mind when it comes to that, generosity. But then last week, Danny came and preached to us about family, how not to wreck your family, how to raise a family without losing your mind. And I thought, if a guy, had a baby and then 21 years later had another one, he's more than capable of preaching on family. I mean, if you do that, I mean, who is the crazy person who does that? If you have one, just have them all at once, and be done with it. Not the Voodoos. They wait 21 years, and then they just talked to me the other day. So we're going to wait another 21 years to have the third one. And I'm like, okay, good luck with that. No, I'm joking. And so then he came and shared from his heart, and he was very vulnerable with us. And I think this is what this series has been, and I hope it is for you too. A place where you have took to a place where you can examine your heart, examine your life. And ask God to come and intervene in those areas of our lives that needs to be transformed, that needs to be redeemed. And today's not different. Today's another subject that affect both men and women, husband and wife, affect both of us the same. I had someone say in the first service, "Oh, that was a good sermon for my husband, Pastor Sam." I was like, "Ma'am, it should have been for you too." All right, because it affects both of us. And it is pride. Pride is a setup. And that's what we're going to talk about today. And we need to continue to take that perspective that the book of Proverbs is not a book of rules. It is a rescue plan from God to you and I in order for us not to wreck our lives. And pride has been one of those things that has destroyed the life of individuals, family lives, companies. Because the higher you climb on the ladder of pride, the harder you fall. We sometimes think the arrogance is loud, and it is. Arrogance is loud, it blinds, and it leads you to a life of crash. But antidote to pride is humility, which is not weaknesses. It is wisdom, it is feet on the ground, it's the reality of life. So let's be honest. We all don't think of pride as a problem, right? We don't think that pride is a problem of ours, our problem. We don't ever think that we have a problem with pride. And then we look out there and we see politicians, we see celebrities, and we shake our heads at the celebrities for the scandals that they provide for us. We laugh at influencers who is flexing on likes and views. And we say, wow, look at these people. They are full of themselves. How many times have we seen a scandal or influencer just flexing on people, and you're like, man, these people are full of themselves, aren't they? But here's the thing, though. Pride isn't just this public personality flaw. It's not something that we see in the life of politicians and artists and influencers in the world. It is a private spiritual cancer that is attacking the heart of every man and every woman, independent of age. It doesn't always look like arrogance or loud boasting. Sometimes it's subtle and sometimes it is hidden. It shows up in many ways like self-reliance. It grows under the surface as defensiveness. It slips out as judgment. It whispers, I know better. I've got this. I don't need no help from no one. And you know what the scary part is? Is that pride often feels like strength until it becomes your downfall. Pride feels like you get it all together until it is falling all apart. You know, one of the stories that I heard once, you know, as a Brazilian, not everything that happens in America you grew up knowing. And one of the things that I just learned about the other day, I think last year, was that about the shuttle, the Space Shuttle Challenger. Right, Space Shuttle Challenger exploded on TV in front of you know, thousands of millions of people, right? 73 seconds in the air and then they blow off. 7 astronauts lost their lives. I was reading a little bit about this because I was intrigued, and the investigation was on that perspective of the guy who was giving it. And the investigation, they found out, NASA engineer found out that there was a potential problem with this old ring or something like that. There is a seal that could break in the code. But instead of just halting everything and saying, no, we're going to take a look into this here, they knew that could be a possibility, but they were too concerned about their reputation, the deadline, the pressure, the television, and all these things that was adding up. When all come to it, it was pride that allowed that shuttle to take off and to explode 73 seconds later. It was pride that led to the disintegration of that shuttle and the loss of life. Pride always looks like progress, always at first, but until it doesn't, until it crashes down and burns. And here's what Proverbs is trying to get through us. Pride isn't just risky. Pride is a setup. It puffs you up while cutting you off from wisdom, cutting you off from accountability, cutting you off of God's grace. And sooner or later, pride leads to your personal downfall. It comes crashing down. Proverbs 16:18 says this: pride goes before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. So I would like to read for you the 3 verses that we will be exploring this morning that has to do with pride. The first one is Proverbs 3:34 that says this: toward the scorners, God is scornful, but to the humble, he gives favor. When pride comes, then comes disgrace. But with the humble is wisdom. Pride goes before destruction, and the haughty spirit before a fall. It is better to be a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. What these verses are teaching us is that pride isn't strength. It is actually self-sabotage, disguised as self-confidence. But humility, it is not weakness as the world pertains it to be. It is wisdom with its feet on the ground. It is the reality of living a life depending on someone else, and his name is God, Jesus. And we ought to ask the question, what is pride? What is pride? In the Hebrew, the dominant word used in pride for the Proverbs for pride is the word zadon, which conveys more than just arrogance. It is insolence. It is suggested exaltation, self-inflation, and a high view of oneself that is unwarranted. It is the kind of inner posture that says, I know better than others, and maybe even better than God himself. It is an attitude that refuses correction, that refuses and resists accountability, and hides from vulnerability. One of the things that I learned early on as I was still in seminary, one of the professors that was teaching us about preaching ethics, he said, you know, the world teaches us to hide and not to be vulnerable with other people. And he said, if you want to be a pastor that cares for people, you must be vulnerable before your people. You cannot hide your weaknesses. You actually have to highlight it so that your people would come alongside you and help you through that problem, through that weakness. And since that I made a commitment to me that I would never hide my sins, that I would always be vulnerable with you, with my people, about the problems that Pastor Sam have. And I think, and it's not only for me to be able to do it, it's for us to walk life together, sustaining one another, because that's what community is about. Community doesn't get stronger when people only share their strength. Community gets stronger when people share their weaknesses with one another, without judgment, so that people would carry each other to the next point of life. The modern world that we live, though, often celebrates this self-confidence and this self-esteem. Now, self-confidence and self-esteem is a good thing. I'm not saying that is a bad thing, but biblically, pride has nothing to do with those two things. Pride in the Bible talks about something different and address something that is different than that. It is self-importance divorced from God dependence. It is self-importance divorced from God's dependence, from being dependent on God. Tim Keller puts it this way: pride is the carbon monoxide of sin. It silently and slowly kills you without even knowing. Listen, pride is the sin beneath the sin. It hides underneath addiction. It hides underneath gossip. It hides underneath cheating, lying. It's what keeps us from apologizing. It's what fuels our obsession with control. It is the reason we hide our faults and exaggerate on our strength. C.S. Lewis famously called pride the great sin. He said it was the complete anti-God state of mind. That's because pride, at its core, is about self-elevation. It is a distortion of identity and perspective that puts self at the center of the world, the center of our desires, of our image, and our need to control. Pride is not very loud. It's very often it is loud. It is often disguised itself in something else, like competence and independence and standards and even morality. Pride can come with a sense of morality to it. But it's so dangerous. You know why? Because it keeps us from apologizing. Pride is what keeps us from apologizing. Because you know why? Because apologize is to admit your fault, right? And pride equates fault with weakness. So we'd rather justify our actions, blame others, and pretend it wasn't a big deal than say, I was wrong. This fear of looking flawed or vulnerable is pride in disguise. Pride keeps us from understanding that we have some faults of our own and that we do hurt people and that at times we are wrong. Pride fuels our need to control. Pride whispers that you know best, that you know better than your parents, that you know better than your spouse, that you know better than your boss, that you know better than those around you, that your plan is safer than everybody else's plan, that the outcome of your life or for your plans are more reliable than anyone else's. Because we have this puff-up idea about ourselves, that we know more, that we know best. And so we go on and micromanage, we overschedule, and live with a chronic anxiety because of it. We say morally, right? This is my responsibility. But often pride does that to us. Often pride is what often allows us not to release control to God and to others in our lives. If you have a problem controlling things, you don't have a problem of action, of delegation. You have a pride problem. Pride drives us to hide. Shame and pride are deeply connected. When we mess up, instead of confessing and asking for accountability, pride allows us to hide, to minimize, to deflect, to lie. Why? Because admitting brokenness would shatter the image that we have so carefully crafted about ourselves. And that's exactly what Genesis chapter 3 is about. Adam and Eve sin, and immediately pride made them do what? Cover it up, to hide. Pride drives us to hide. Pride also leads to gossip. Pride fuels gossip. Gossip often comes from the need to feel superior to somebody else. It is not just about sharing a story. It is about placing yourself above someone else's failures or someone else's mess. It makes you feel in the know. It makes you feel important. It elevates your moral senses. In many ways, relationally and intellectually. But the root of it all, it is pride. You know what else the pride does? Pride inflames addiction. Let me, I hear this often. Let me pop that, and maybe I'll get criticized for this one here. But not all addiction is fueled by your trauma. A lot of our addictions are fueled by our pride. We believe we're above consequences. That we believe that we can handle whatever the world brings it to me. Whatever temptation, don't worry about it. I can handle it on my own. That we deserve this relief or escape called addiction because of how hard our life has been. Pride keeps us from seeking the help we need because it says, we've got this, I've got this. When your life is falling apart, you still lying to yourself, I got this, I got this. That's pride working in you. You know what else the pride does? Inflate our strength and masks our weaknesses. On social media, in the workplace, and in friendship, pride makes us overstate, make us embellish, and protect this idea, this version of ourselves that is not true. We downplay our faults and highlights our wins. It's image maintenance. It erodes authenticity and keeps us from going deeper in our relationships. One of the reasons why we don't have deep relationships, our relationships so superficial, is because pride keeps us from being open to the people who loves us, who cares for us, and who is there to sustain us in our weaknesses. Pride sets us up for downfall, not just because of what it is, but because of what it prevents. It's not about what it is only, but it's what it prevents. And it prevents repentance. It prevents reconciliation. It prevents someone from being teachable, from being vulnerable, and from healing. Listen, if you have spiritual wounds, emotional wounds that is not being healed, is not healing, it's because pride is in the way of your healing. Do you want to know how to unmask pride in your daily life? I have 5 questions. They're not up there for you for a reason. I want you to pay attention. My broken English, I'll do my best here to speak them to you, right? But you need to get these 5 questions. They are important. If you want to unmask pride in your life, if you want to find out, here's the test. This is the 5 questions. Do I struggle to say I was wrong? Do I minimize my sin while magnifying other people's sin? Am I more concerned with looking right than being real? Do I hide my struggles from those who cares most about me? Am I teachable? Am I moldable? Or do I resist correction? Those 5 questions are crucial in trying to figure it out if pride is ruling your life. Let me ask them again. Do I struggle to say I was wrong? Do I need to make a joke for it to stick? And all the husbands is like, yes, do it, Pastor Sam, do it. I have to give you a little time for you to think about that. I just got in trouble, you didn't laugh. That's not good. Let me break it down. Women cannot say I'm wrong, right? Oh, everybody. Keep digging that hole a little bit. Do I struggle to say I was wrong? Do I minimize my sins while magnifying the sins of others? Am I too concerned about me looking right than really being the real me to those around me? Do I hide my struggles from those who care? Am I teachable, or do I resist correction? Listen, in relationship and leadership and parenting and faith, the how of pride is not just about arrogance. It is about avoidance, self-preservation, and image protection. And until we confront it, it will keep sabotaging our joy, our integrity, our intimacy with God, and our intimacy with others. But the world around us has renamed, has rebranded pride. The culture that we have today has rebranded pride, and call it good. It shows up in a slogan like this: "Be your own hero. No one tells me what to do. I don't need anyone. I am enough." We have turned independence into an idol. We praise people who do things their own way. We call it creativity, innovation, and criticize those who admit weaknesses. Even Christian circles can fall into this trap, equating pride with boldness. I have seen pastors being so proudful because they call it boldness in the kingdom of God. No, you're being prideful. You're putting people down. You are judging other people. That's not what God has called us to do. Actually, pastors are to be humble and to live a humble life before other people, as Christ demonstrated to us. You can't disguise boldness with pride, and humility with passivity. But Proverbs pulls the curtain back. It doesn't sugarcoat it. It says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace. Pride goes before destruction. And then James in the New Testament, he comes up and he adds to it, and he says this: God opposes the proud, but give grace to the humble. I mean, God opposes. It's not even like God doesn't like pride. It's not even like God like, oh, he's paying attention on a prideful individual. No, he's saying he opposes. God opposes the proud. He doesn't only dislike it. The Greek word for oppose here that reflects what Proverbs 3 is saying in the Greek is antatasso, a military term meaning to set oneself in battle against it. I mean, God wages war against prideful people. God actively sets himself against pride. I don't know about you, but I want a God on my side, not God on the opposite side of me, raging war against me. God actively set himself against pride, not because he's a cruel God, but because he knows what it leads to. He knows what pride leads to, and pride leads to your fall. And pride sets your downfall in three different ways. It shuts down correction. It shuts out your correction. Pride doesn't listen. It interrupts. It justifies. It surrounds yourself with yes men, and eventually it silences the truth that could have saved you. There's a story in 2 Chronicles chapter 26. I don't have time to read the whole thing for you, and you can take the time to read it at home. It's a great story. I'll give a summary here, we'll read some verses, but King Uzziah was a great ruler in Judah, right? He reigned for 52 years and accomplished incredible military engineering achievements. I mean, we talk about technology. We'll talk about that in a little second here when we read it. But the text says that when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. Let's read it a little bit. 2 Chronicles chapter 26, verses 14 to 21. And Uzziah prepared for all the army shields, spears, helmets, coats of mail, bows, and stones for slinging. In Jerusalem, he made machines like this. We're talking about ancient times. Like these guys are creating all this technology of war in order to protect Jerusalem, not to protect God's people. So they invented by skillful men to be on the towers and the corners to shoot arrows of great stones. And his fame spread far. This is a guy who accomplished some great things. He was famous for all the technology that he had created in order to protect his people. He was the king after all, for he was marvelous helped till he was strong. But when he was strong, he grew proud to his destruction. The story goes that when he got so powerful, he was like, he thought he could do anything. So he goes into the temple, and he goes into the temple to burn some incense to the Lord. But that was not something that was up for him. It was just for the priest to do. So the priest comes in and says, Uzziah, what are you doing, dude? This is not something for you to do. Like, what are you trying to do? You're being unfaithful to God. God never called you to burn incense. That's my job. But Uzziah's like, you know what? I am the king. I do whatever I want. I am famous. Proudful. And the priests are like, okay, because you're being unfaithful, God's going to punish you. And he became leprous. He got leprosy right there on his spot. You see what is going on here? Uzziah entered the temple to burn incense, a task that God commanded only for the priests to do. He was struck with leprosy until his death. See, here's the thing. His success made him believe he was untouchable. That's what pride does. It turns blessing into entitlement. It turns blessing into entitlement. Let me ask you this question to make it personal, what is going on here. Have you ever pushed someone away because they told you something you didn't want to hear it? Let me ask you the question again. Have you ever pushed someone away because they told you something you didn't want to hear it? That might have been God's grace disguised in a little criticism, in a critic. And you're pushing it away because it didn't make you feel good. You know what else that pride does? It isolates you. Pride says, I don't need no help. But isolation eventually becomes suffocation. There's another story I'll tell you, read a little bit about 1 Kings chapter 12, verses 1 to 14. Rehoboam refuses to listen to the counsel of older men, and instead of he listens to his peer. His pride costs him most of the kingdom. Why? Because pride shrinks your world to the size of your ego. This is the story of the guy. I don't have time to read it, but I'll tell you the story. Rehoboam become king, right? There's a whole story about it, but he becomes king. And then he becomes king, and then the people come to him and say, hey, your dad was a little harsh on us. You know, we worked so hard for him. Can you please light up we are tired. Can you please light up the load? Can you make it easy for us to work? You know, we just need a little time of rest and a little lighter work. Rehoboam was like, okay, give me 3 days. I'm going to ask some people around that are going to counsel me. I'm going to ask them around and see what they say. So he goes to the older people. Well, not older people, the elders of the time. And he asks, hey, what should we do? What should I do? And the elders of the time was like, you know what? These people are tired. They work hard. So, Solomon, your dad, make them work hard. So give them a little time. Give them a little space. Be a little easier on them. But then Rehoboam kind of didn't really like what he heard, and so he goes to his peers. He goes to his peers, the people that grew up with him, his friends, guys on the same age, people who was yes men to him. And he asked them the question, hey, these people came to me and asked for a little easiness on the workplace. What should I do? And the kids said, come on, man. They're trying to chicken out. They're chickening out. Don't let them chicken out. Get harder on them. Tell them, my dad spanked you with a little belt. We're going to bring down the house on you guys. You don't chickening out. If you're chickening out, it's going to get worse, worse, and worse. And you know what happened? He didn't listen to the voice of wisdom. He listened to his peer. Because that's what pride does. It shrinks your world to the size of your ego. It filters out wisdom because it doesn't like how it makes you feel. So instead of listening to wisdom, you start listening to people that are like-minded you. C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity writes this: pride gets no pleasure out of having something, only out of having more of it than the next man. It is the comparison that makes you proud, the pleasure of being above the rest. That's why pride is lonely. It's competitive. It's exhausting. And eventually alienates you from the very relationship that God has designed you to keep. Designed to keep you grounded. And pride attracts destruction. Let's not soften these. Proverbs 16:18 says, doesn't say pride may cause a fall. No, it says pride goes before destruction. Destruction, not discomfort. Destruction. So we need to go from pride to humility. We gotta get on the way from pride into humility. And the good news is that God's grace runs deeper, flows stronger through humility in our lives, and that we can overcome this tendency that we have to be prideful. Isaiah 57:15 tells us this: I, God, dwell in the high and holy place, and also with him who is of a contrite and lowly spirit. God lifts the low, but lets the proud fall. So we must find the way to humility. What wisdom looks like with its feet on the ground. The shape of wisdom is a cross, not a pedestal. Let me say this again. The shape of wisdom is a cross, not a pedestal. If pride is the way up that leads to collapse, humility is the way down that leads to redemption. So we need to move from a life of pride to a life of humility. We need to stop going up the ladder that leads to collapse, and we need to start going down the ladder that leads to redemption. The gospel doesn't just cause us to avoid arrogance. It calls us to embody Christ-likeness, to be like Jesus Christ, humble. C.S. Lewis, after diagnosing pride as the complete anti-God state of mind, wrote about humility in mere Christianity. This is what he says: do not imagine that if you meet a really humble man, he will be what most people call humble nowadays. He will not be a sort of greasy, smarmy person. He will not be thinking about humility. He will not be thinking about himself at all. Biblical humility is not self-degradation. That's not, and C.S. Lewis is trying to tell us, like, biblical humility is not self-degradation. It is not walking around with your head down, think less of yourself. Oh, I'm not good, I'm not this, I'm not that. No. It's what Tim Keller says. He famously said this: humility is not thinking less of yourself, it is thinking of yourself less. And we see this most clearly in the life of Jesus himself. Look what the Apostle Paul tells us in Philippians chapter 2, verse 5 through 8. Have this mind among yourself, which is yours in Christ Jesus. It's possessive. He's given to himself. You already have this. It is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. The wisdom of God is not about climbing higher. It is about going lower. It is about kneeling to serve, washing the feet, forgiving the enemies, carrying the cross, allowing other people to serve you. God's wisdom isn't about chasing status or spotlight. It's about rolling up your sleeves, showing up for others, doing the quiet stuff that no one claps for. It is making dinner when you are tired, listening instead of lecturing, forgiving someone who still gets under your skin. Do you know that person that annoys the heck out of you? That's the person you should be listening to. That's what humility is all about. The world that we live today says, exalt yourself. The Bible says, Jesus says, humble yourself and God will lift you up. The world says, build your platform. Jesus says, take the lowest seat on the table. The world says, be a boss. Jesus says, become a servant of all. This isn't weakness, people. It is power under control. It's meekness, the kind that Jesus says blesses his people. In Matthew chapter 5, verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. which is the way to wisdom. Listen, humility isn't just something you need on your spiritual resume. It's not like that. It is something that touches how you speak, work, love, and lead. And here's what humility looks like in the real world, on our everyday stuff that we live everyday life. Humility looks like a dad who apologizes for his kids after snapping at them out of stress. Not because he had to apologize, no, but because his heart values the relationship with the kids more than being right. It is a mom who listened carefully to her teenagers' confused opinions of themselves and their peers and the world. Instead of shutting them down and say, you will understand later. No. The mom stop and listen and take in consideration what the kids are saying. Humility shows up when a coworker lets someone else take the lead of a project. Not because they are incapable of doing, but because they see leadership as lifting others. Not proving oneself to be good and to be better and to be right. It is when a spouse chooses a gentle word instead of a sarcastic jab during an argument. Not because they lost the argument. No. Because peace means more to the spouse than pride does. It is the friend who says, honestly, I'm not sure I know the answers to this, what's going on right here, but I don't know the answer. I can't give you this, but here I am. I'm here with you and for you. Instead of pretending to be expert on the subject and to give answers that you know nothing about. It is choosing not to post the passive-aggressive social media comment. It is choosing to walk away when people are gossiping in the workplace. It is choosing to turn around the conversation from criticism to encouragement, from complaint to compliment. Humility is small, but it is not weak. It is bold enough to be quiet when everything is wanting you to be loud. It is strong enough to celebrate someone else's win when you feel like you are losing. Think about what would your home look like if humility defined how you parent your kids, how you spoke to your spouse, how you texted your friends, how you carried your attitude after a long day work. What if your leadership, whether home, work, or church, was fueled not by image management, but humility and integrity? Listen, in a world obsessed with platform and applause, humility feels like rebellion. It is not natural, but it is powerful. It doesn't go unnoticed by God. Proverbs 22:4 says this: the reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. Let me read this again. The world tells us the proud will win. The Bible tells us that the reward of humility and fear of the Lord is riches, honor, and life. Listen, humility may not get spotlight, but it gets heaven's attention. Let me say this again. Humility will not get you the spotlight, but will definitely get God's attention. And in the end, the humble are the ones still standing, still whole, and still at peace when the prideful is losing their minds. Remember this. Pride is a setup. It flatters you on the way up, then leaves you bruised in the bottom of it all. But humility is an off-ramp from self-destruction. It is the posture that makes you teachable, grateful, gentle, and wise. God gives grace to the humble, and He gave us Christ, the ultimate picture of humility. So today, if you have been climbing the ladder of self-importance, step off it. Bow low. Repent deep. Walk with Jesus, the one who stooped down, came down to save you. Jesus didn't go up a ladder to save you. He came down to save you. Proverbs 16:19 says this: it is better to be of a lowly spirit with the poor than to divide the spoil with the proud. You know why? Because the higher you climb, the harder you fall. But the lower you knee, the stronger you stand. I would like to transition into communion time right now. Because Jesus came down to save us, He also died a humble death. So humility begins at the foot of the cross. There is no better place to be humble than at the cross, at the foot of the cross. And that's what communion time is about. So if you don't have the emblems with you, just raise your hand and we'll bring one to you. The ushers will bring one to you. But humility begins at the foot of the cross. And there's no better place to be humble than the foot of the cross. Because there we are reminded we are more sinful than we could ever dare to admit that we are. But it's also at the foot of the cross that we come to the realization that we are loved, more loved than we ever dare to hope. So when you believe that Christ came to save us through humility, you stop needing to prove yourself to people in the church and to people at home and to people in the world. You stop because you're relying on God. You stop needing to always be right because that doesn't matter anymore. People matter more than being right. You stop defending your ego and you start resting in Jesus Christ. Andrew Murray, the pastor, said this: humility is the displacement of self by the enthronement of God. Humility is the displacement of self by the enthronement of God. And Jesus doesn't just call us to humility, He embodies it. He's the servant king, the one who came low to rise us up, the one who didn't consider equality with God something to be grasped, but emptied Himself for your sake, for my sake. That's the wisdom of the cross, and that's what keeps us from wrecking our lives with pride. So as you partake of the bread and the juice, humble yourself before your Lord. Surrender to Him your thoughts, your actions, your words, yourself. Partake of the bread and the juice.